First of all, thank you everyone for coming to this talk. I want to check, can everyone at the back hear me? All good. So, I'm going to be talking about steganography. My talk is called Cloaked in Pixels, Concealing Payloads with Steganography. Before I get into it, let's go for a quick agenda. I'm going to start off this talk with an obligatory who am I, an introduction into myself. I'm then going to move into what is steganography. I'm going to do an intro to steganography. I'm going to explain in detail how we can use steganography to achieve a certain objective. I'm then going to get to the heart of this talk, and this is a proof of concept steganographic shellcode encoder and runner demo I've created. I'm going to explain how this works and how it can be used, and then I'm going to switch seats, move to the blue team side, and perform an analysis of a few samples of malware found in the wild that abuse steganography for evasion. So, who am I? I am Ben. I go by the online handle PolygonBen. I've got a YouTube and a few blogs, which I've linked up there. I currently work as an analyst in a SOC at Accenture. I got introduced to security when I was around 14 or 15 for a government-funded scheme called Cyber Discovery, and there's a photo of me looking a few years younger at one of their in-real-life sort of CTF events. Okay, so enough about me. Let's get into this talk. What is steganography? Okay, so the word itself originates from the Greek words steganos and graphia, which roughly translate to covered writing. So from the etymology of the word, we've got a vague idea of what steganography actually is. Okay, so if we look at the official definition, we can see steganography is the practice of concealing information within another object, another message or a physical object to avoid detection, to avoid this message, the secret message being read. Okay, so let's have a look at a few cases in history where steganography has been used or abused to achieve an objective. So the first ever recorded use was around 500 BC. And there was this Greek ruler called Histiaeus. He was the ruler of an area of land called Miletus, and he was being held against his will by a certain king Darius. Histiaeus wanted to communicate with his son-in-law, Aristogras, who was looking after Miletus while he was being held captive. And he wanted to send a message to his son-in-law, Aristogras, to tell him to start a revolution, but he couldn't risk this message to his son-in-law being intercepted. So, Histiaeus took his most trustworthy slave, shaved his head, and tattooed a message on the shaved head saying to Aristogras to start a revolt and to free him. He then waited till the hair on the slave grew back and the message was hidden, and he sent the slave on his way. If the slave was stopped and searched, there would be no visible message because it was hidden by his hair on his head. Okay, so that's one particular use, one case where steganography has been used to transmit a message. Going forward a couple of thousand years, we get to Nazi Germany. And Nazi spies used microdots on benign objects to smuggle espionage information. So what is a microdot? A microdot is a tiny photograph or a text document which is reduced to the size of a dot, sometimes as small as 1 millimeter. A fancy contraption of lenses is used to downsize a regular document onto a dot on a benign object, and then they could only be read with a microscope or a microscope to enlarge it. Okay, so if for example, the doll was passed across borders and it was found, an intelligence officer would not suspect the doll of containing espionage information because it looks like a benign doll and the dot is so small that no one would suspect it to contain espionage information. Okay, for the remainder of this talk, we're going to be talking about steganography in the context of malware, and specifically looking at how steganography can be used to hide malware. So digital steganography is a subset of steganography, which only really considers involving embedding data, hiding data, or malware within another file. Okay, this could be an image, a video, or a benign document, a Word document, an Excel file. If you're creative enough, you could use any particular file type and hide data in it somehow. However, in the wild, you see a certain few file types which use steganography more often than others, okay? How is steganography achieved? There are loads of different methods to perform steganography. For the remainder of this talk, I'm going to be talking about a single type, a single method, and that is least significant bit steganography. So, least significant bit steganography abuses the fact that when you've got an image and it's made up of pixels and each pixel has color information stored in binary, if you change the least significant bit of that binary number, it has a small impact on the overall value. If that statement didn't make much sense, do not worry. This is a really important concept and we're going to go in a lot further detail so it's fully understood. So, I'm going to take one step back and we're going to ask the question, how are digital images stored? What is an image? A digital image is an array of pixels, and that begs the question, what is a pixel? How do we define a pixel? The pixel is a smallest unit of a digital image. A pixel is the smallest unit which can be individually controlled and manipulated. And when I say individually controlled and manipulated, I mean, can we change the color? So, they are quite literally the building blocks of an image. An image, high-resolution one, may have hundreds and thousands, if not more, individual pixels which you can change the color. These pixels store 3 numbers, and the numbers represent the strength of the RGB components of that pixel. And just to explain this a bit further, I've got an analogy here. That should be, it looks like an image of Tyne Bridge in Newcastle in an Excel spreadsheet. I can see it hasn't displayed it too well, but I'm still going to play this. And we can see we zoom into this Excel spreadsheet. And we can see this isn't actually a spreadsheet. It is an Excel, it isn't an image. It is a spreadsheet made up of loads of different cells. And what I'm doing there, I'm highlighting 3 particular cells. And I've highlighted 1 red, green, and blue cell all in one particular column. And that is 1 pixel. You can think of that as being 1 pixel. It's got 3 numbers, 1 number to represent the strength of red, another number to represent the strength of green, and the final number to represent the strength of blue. So, by the way, if you wanted to try that out yourself, you can upload a photo. There's the link to it there, and it will convert it into a spreadsheet. It's quite a fun thing to play around with. Just to highlight this point, I've got another analogy with a simple web app I wrote, and we've got, you can think of that red box there being 1 pixel, and we've got sort of 3 columns here for RGB, and we can change the number to adjust the strength of the corresponding RGB component. At the moment, there is 255 in decimal, which is what we all count in. It's what we know as our numbers. And then we've got the binary conversion above that. I'm going to modify these numbers a bit, and I'm going to start off by going through each color individually. So I'm going to change that to 0, and then we're going to choose the green maximum, 255, and we're going to do the same for blue. Nice. What I'm now going to do is do a mix of these 2 colors and see if we can get maybe a pink color. So we're going to add a little bit of green and more red. Okay? And now we can see we've got a pink color. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to modify the far right-hand side bit on the binary conversion of each of the RGB components. So at the moment, for the red number, the decimal number is 231, and we're going to modify the far right-hand side bit and turn that from a 1 to a 0. Okay? And we're going to do the same for green and blue. And I want you to notice the color of this final box and what impact this makes. So we're going to change that from a 1 to a 0, and it's going to go to 230. And we're going to do the same from there, and so on and so forth. We've modified the 3 bits, and it's made a small impact on the overall color. And just to highlight this, this is a really important point. We've got 2 pixels there which look almost identical in color. But we have modified the far right-hand side bit, and we can see for the decimal conversion, it's changed by a magnitude of 1 for both of those. That far right-hand side bit is called the least significant bit. Modifying that has a small impact on the overall number, and hence has a small impact on the overall color. And that is where we can use steganography. So, we've got an image, and it's made up of pixels, and each pixel has an RGB component. We can modify the least significant bit for each of the RGB components of each of the pixels, and it won't make a big impact to the overall image. Okay? You would have noticed an image has a finite number of pixels, right? You can count the number of pixels, and let's say the image is X pixels wide and Y pixels tall. Each individual pixel we can encode 3 bits, because we can encode 1 bit for the least significant bit of R, and then 1 for green and 1 for blue, and so on and so forth. So if you've got X pixels wide and Y pixels height, there is a maximum amount of data you can encode with steganography, and that's 3xy. So that is important to know. There is sort of an upper limit to the amount of data you can encode. So we're going to get to the heart of this talk, and this is the Python implementation for the steganographic shellcode encoder and runner. So I've got 2 scripts. One is v2 encoder, and the other is v2 runner. I've also got the GitHub repository where these are hosted, and I've got 2 blog posts which go in detail to the source code, how this all works, how it all fits together. I'm not going to be able to explain all the code in detail today, and I would encourage, if you're interested, check out those blog posts and have a look at the repository. Let's briefly go through this first script. So the v2 encoder. This script takes an image, a normal image, legitimate image, and it takes your shellcode, and it encodes the shellcode into the image. And it uses least significant bit steganography to do this. Okay? So this would be ran on your sort of your attacking host, the one you're staging your payload on. You wouldn't run this on your sort of compromised host, your target host. Here is the source code for this. There is an important function, encode LSV, and I've redacted this to space. This function uses least significant bit steganography to loop through each of the pixels and then modify it to embed your shellcode. The other important thing to note is there is a variable called runner string, and the runner string contains further Python code. This Python code is used to execute the shellcode. This Python code in the runner string variable is also embedded into the image. Okay, so that's the encoder script, and we're going to move on to the runner script, and we'll put a bit more attention on this one. This one is to be executed on your target host, the one on your compromised host, basically. This source code is a lot smaller, and we've got a decode function. The decode function reads the image and goes pixel by pixel and pulls out the least significant bit. And then we've got a bit at the bottom which basically executes this and executes the shellcode and does whatever the shellcode does. And I'm going to step through this decode function because it is important. So it takes 1 parameter, and that's the file name of your encoded image, your malicious image. Okay? We then use an image library to pull out the width and height values, and then we do a triple nested for loop. So we loop through each pixel, and then for each pixel we loop through the RGB components. And then we pull out the least significant bit of all those RGB components of all pixels. When we did encode this shellcode and the other stuff into the image, we needed to add 8 consecutive zeros or a null byte to indicate that this is where our data is up to. And then when we decode it, we look for those 8 consecutive zeros, and that will tell us that all the data on from that point is normal. It's normal. It's the image. It's benign, and then everything before that is what we're encoding. Okay. So that is the script. The other thing I want to highlight is this. We've got at the top there the buffer. That's the shellcode, and then we've got this stuff which is in the runner string variable. All of this would be encoded within the image. This would never be written to disk, and that's an important point to make. This would only be called out dynamically and ran in memory. If this script was stored on disk, it would likely get killed by antivirus very quickly. But that's dynamically extracted from the image and then executed. And I've got a semi-live demo here. It's just a recording of me doing this earlier. And on my right-hand side, I've got a Windows machine, and on my left-hand side, I've got my attacking box. What I'm doing is just showing Windows Defender as enabled. And it is, and then I'm also going to show you the process responsible for Windows Defender is running. and it is msmpeng.exe, and then there's also Hitman Pro, which I believe is an antivirus associated with Sophos. And that is running. Once we've done that, I'm going to generate the shellcode, and before I do that, I'm going to show this image, newcastle.png. This is a legitimate image, it hasn't been modified yet. Okay? Once we've got that image, we want to generate shellcode which we can embed into that image. And that's what I'm going to do on the left-hand side here. First of all, I'm going to get the private IP address of my Kali machine. So when we generate the shellcode, and for example, I'm going to generate a reverse shell here. You could do whatever you want, but just for example, I'm generating a basic Windows shellcode for that Kali box. So I'm using MS Venom to generate the shellcode, and then I'm specifying the element, the listening host, the private IP address of the Kali machine. And I also need to choose a port to listen on, and I'm going to choose port 31337. And then finally, I want the format for the shellcode to be generated to be Python. And then once I've done that, it will take a few seconds, but we'll get our shellcode generated. And now we need to move this and save it in a text file, shellcode.txt. And once we've got that, we can embed it into the image and we can run it. So I'm saving it into shellcode.txt, and then I'll run dir on this side, and we can see the size of the shellcode.txt file has been updated. We can type it out, we can cat it out just to verify that text file now has the shellcode. Okay, so we've got the shellcode, we've got the image. We can now use that encoder script to encode the image with the shellcode. And that's what I'm doing here. Python v2 encoder, we need to pass attack S for shellcode and attack I for image, and then pass that through the command line arguments, and we will see when I do that, it will generate a new file. And this new file will be embedded with the shellcode. And hopefully, when I do that, it generates pop_newcastle.png. I'm going to get these two images up and we can compare them. On the right-hand side is the malicious image, but we can see they're indistinguishable. They look almost identical. You wouldn't suspect the one on the right-hand side was malicious. Okay, we've got this malicious image, and I'm now going to go onto this v2 runner script, and I've hard-coded the file name to the malicious image there. Now we can run this and see if it works. But before that, I want to set up the listener on my Kali machine, just because the shellcode I generated was for a particular port to pull back to the Kali machine, so I need to listen on that port on the Kali machine. And I'm going to listen on 31337, I'm using netcat to do that. And then once I've done that, on my right-hand side, I'm just going to execute the script, and we can see we get a reverse shell callback. I can run who am I, whatever I wanted to do. I've got remote access to the Windows box from my Kali machine. And just to show you, I'm going to create a directory. You have been pwned on the Kali machine, and it's creating it on the Windows machine. That's just to show you we've sort of just compromised it. Obviously, you could choose whatever shellcode you want it to be. You could embed a Cobalt Strike beacon. You've got freedom to use whatever shellcode. However, there is an upper limit to the amount you can encode. However, I've never got close to that. Okay. This didn't get detected by Windows Defender. No detections flagged up. However, if you did some really strange shellcode which deployed ransomware, maybe that would. It all depends on what you want to execute. So, just to show you, we can upload those two scripts. We can upload the v2 runner script to VirusTotal and it has no hits. That's because it doesn't contain any sort of malicious code. All the malicious code is stored within the image using least significant bit steganography, which VirusTotal won't detect. If you upload the v2 encoder script, it would flag as malicious because there are strings in it which antivirus vendors would definitely flag up. So why does this evade antivirus, and would it evade endpoint detection response? So how does antivirus work? Antivirus vendors, they have signatures for known malicious code, and when a file is written to disk, it will scan against these known signatures. These signatures may be specific strings, they could be Yara rules, they could be hashes. Okay? In this case, we've got no malicious signatures stored on disk. It's only dynamically sort of generated when it gets pulled out in memory from the image. Would it bypass EDR? I haven't tested this. I don't know for sure, and it depends on the shellcode. For this reverse shellcode, I suspect it would. EDR doesn't work by using signatures on files. It works by looking at the behavior generated by the activity which is going on. So maybe the process spawn activity, or the network connections the process makes, and the registry modifications, and so on and so forth. In this case, I reckon EDR would kill that process. So that's my sort of proof of concept. Let's have a look at a few cases where steganography has been used in the wild by real hackers, by real threat actors. And the first case I'm looking at begins with a malicious Word document delivered by phishing. Like a lot of these malicious Word documents, they have a macro. And this macro, VBA macro, contains usually that it will download further stages to perform further actions. So we can use a tool called OLE VBA to extract the macro from that Word document, and we can see it's obfuscated. It's unreadable, you don't know what it's doing. So I'm going to quickly deobfuscate that. That took me a lot longer than one slide click, but we can see that's roughly what it translates to. That is what would happen. And I'm going to break that down. We can see there is a load of sort of just Windows commands being ran, and these are the commands. First of all, the directory which this is executing from is changed to local app data. After that, a JPEG is downloaded from this external domain, www.xmlschemeformat.com. And this JPEG is stored outputted to this local app data directory. And then the cert util command is used to decode the JPEG to an exe. The cert util is a native Windows binary, it's signed, it's used by sysadmins to manage certificates. It's not malware, it's what we call a lol bin, living off the LAN binary. It's legit, but it can be used to perform malicious actions. So we've got this JPEG here, let's inspect this. We can download that ourselves, and we can run the file command and verify, hey, this is a normal JPEG, it's not an executable, and we can open this and see it's a photo of the James Webb Telescope. Okay? But magically, when cert util was run on it, an exe was extracted somehow. So we can do some further analysis and sort of dig into this file, and I'm going to use the strings command to do that. I'm going to run strings on this JPEG file and see what else we can find. When I scroll up to the top, we see the sort of JPEG magic bytes, the header at the top, which indicates this is a JPEG. That's why, it is a JPEG. If we scroll down, we see a big section of text, and it begins with begin certificate, okay? So we can remember, and I'm going to go back one slide, that cert util command was used with the decode flag. And when that command is ran, it will look at the JPEG for that begin certificate, and it will base64 decode the contents. So what we can do is copy that base64 text, which was embedded within the image, put it into CyberChef, and base64 decode it, and we can see the sort of NZ at the top, and that this program cannot be ran in DOS mode, indicating this is a portable executable. If you wanted to sort of verify that, you can even there's another CyberChef function called detect file type. You could put that in there, or you could download this and then upload it to VirusTotal, and you can say this is sort of the final stage payload. So the Word document uses a malicious macro to download a JPEG, and then it uses cert util, a login, to extract an exe from that JPEG, and then it will run that. That is one particular case. I'm going to go over another case now from Trend Micro. They released a blog post on a particular strain of malware which they named Payloads. And like a lot of malware, it's delivered by phishing. And in this case, we've also got another malicious Word document. The Word document has a macro, and the macro executes some Windows commands, and then it eventually executes PowerShell. This PowerShell downloads an image and plays around with it, and then magically we can see further PowerShell is spawned. So let's have a look at this PowerShell, which is executed and which downloads this image. Okay? This is what it does here. I've got no idea what the full URL is, but we can see it downloads that PNG, and it does some bitmap and get pixel operations in the PowerShell to extract it. This one also uses least significant bit steganography. And it's using an open source tool called Invoke PS Image. You can download this on GitHub. You can use it, but like a lot of tools, pen testing, red teaming tools, which were created for a legitimate purpose, a bit like Mimikatz, they become abused in the wild. So there's the link where you can download it, and I've got an example of how it's used. You would download this on your sort of staging box where you want to prepare your payload, and you would run invoke PS image, and then you can supply a PowerShell script you want to embed within the image. And in this case, just for example, I'm doing invoke Mimikatz. And then you supply an image, in this case, B-size Newcastle, and then I've outputted it as B-size Newcastle. So, when I run this, it gives us a one-liner we can use, which automatically opens the image. In this case, we can see it's using a hard-coded file path from my PC. Previously, we saw that was hosted on a HTTP server, but in this case, when I generated it, it uses just straight from the VM I'm using, and it gives you a one-liner to sort of extract that second stage payload from the image and execute it. This is a lot neater, this one-liner, than my proof of concept, but it's been used in the wild. I thought to mention it. And just to show you, we've got the two images. On the left-hand side, we've got the B-sides Newcastle, and on the right-hand side, we've got the evil B-sides Newcastle. You can see a slight difference, but it's not major. You wouldn't suspect this one contains a Mimikatz script. Okay. So there are a few other cases I want to mention. One of them comes from the Huntress team. And recently, this year, they were dealing with a campaign, an X-worm campaign. And once again, it starts with phishing. This phishing contained an attachment. The attachment contained a .zip that had a VBS script, which downloaded further PowerShell, and then it downloaded the Death Note wallpaper. Okay? If you saw a Death Note wallpaper magically pop up on your desktop, you should be worried. In this case, the Death Note wallpaper used Steganography to encode an X-worm binary. Jai Minton from Huntress did a YouTube video on this. I would recommend checking it out. And Izzy posted about it there. So, one final thing I want to mention. This GitHub repository, Steg in the Wild, it lists all the sort of places where, in news articles or security blogs, where steganography has been used in the wild by threat actors to evade detection. There is some really interesting stuff mentioned here, and if you like this talk, I recommend checking that out. I believe that's it. Any questions?
What's your favourite dinosaur?
T-Rex. Yes.
How would you thrust up this sort of activity?
That's a great question. So, for the audience, threat hunting is a process you will perform to maybe identify malicious activity which your current detections have missed. First of all, if I was to threat hunt for this, I would want to have visibility of the process activity on all my hosts with the command line arguments involved. And I would start off fairly simply just by looking for processes with file extensions for images like .jpeg, .png, and so on and so forth in the command line arguments and processes. And you find all processes which have those file extensions of an image in them, you can quickly be able to identify ones which may raise concerns. For example, if you saw one for CircuitUtil or another sort of native Windows login, then obviously you should be concerned. If you saw something like photos.exe, you don't need to be concerned, and that's likely legitimate. When you do that threat hunt, you could also create some detection logic off the back of that, right? You could look for CircuitUtil.exe processes spawned containing JPEG, PNG in the command line arguments, and when that process is spawned, you alert on that and you can identify that. Any other questions?
Right.
All good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.